Okay, so we have been discussing greedy algorithms, and inside that, the problem in discussion is job sequencing with deadline. So, unlike the previous case where we are interested in scheduling the activities which are mutually compatible with each other. So, each activity has some start time and finish time when you are considering an activity selection problem. So greedy solution to that problem was to sort all the activities in order of its finish time and then select the activity such a way that the activity which is being selected is not clashing with the previous activity. Now, this is slightly different context. Domain is different here. In case of job sequencing with deadline problem, we have a deadline association with every job or activity, whatever you can say. So you have a deadline association. Second thing, here it is assumed that each job will require one time unit. So if you schedule any particular job at 2, it will finish at 3. That's what it means. If you schedule it at 4, then it should be finished at 5. So unlike the previous case where start time and finish time or the duration may be different, here the duration is common. It's always one time unit for each and every job. So the problem is to schedule a job in such a way that maximum number of, the profit which is being earned by the jobs are maximized. Now, what do we mean by profit? Profit means the value or some number which is associated with every job. And if you finish that job before the deadline, you can earn that profit, you can earn that value. So problem is to maximize the total profit. Now again, the profit association with every job is different. So for some job, your profit may be some number, for another job it may be a different number. So obviously there are the different profit association. So you require to select a job, or you should be smart enough to select a job in such a way that the total profit is maximized. So this is what the primary background of job sequencing with deadline problem. We have also discussed the solution or started discussing the solution. Solution is to schedule a job in order of its profit. Obviously, you want to schedule a job which has highest profit first, but at the same time, again you will apply some intelligence and find out which one is the best possible slot for that job. And obviously, the best possible slot is the last slot, because when you schedule that job in the last slot, it means that you will be having a choice to put another job in the previous slots if they are having a smaller deadline. So the larger deadline can be scheduled at the last possible slot so that you can make sure that the previous slots are available for upcoming job which might be with the lower profit value. So this is the approach, and let us try to understand the algorithm, how we obviously the first step is you require to sort a job in the order of the profit. So this is what we are getting over here. We have an algorithm for job sequencing with two parameters are given, deadline and profit. Both of these are an array. So where D of I represents the deadline of job I and P of I represents the profit which is being earned by job I. I hope you understood the parameters. And again, we are assuming over here, just to make it simple, that the jobs are sorted in decreasing order of profit. Remember, jobs are sorted in decreasing order of profit. This is an assumption. Decreasing order means the highest profit job will come first in our set of selection. So that is the assumption. Now let us start to start the algorithm. First, obviously you require, here we have not mentioned how many jobs are there. So obviously you want to traverse. So when you want to traverse through each and every job, you require a length. So the first step is you need to find out the length of the jobs. Either you can specify length of D or length of P. Both are same. So you want to find out the length first. and initially you are making sure that your selection function or your value of x, now x represents the output. So if x value is 0, that means the job is selected, sorry, not selected, and if x value is 1, it means that job is selected. So here, initially we are making sure that none of the jobs are selected. So this is an initialization. So what we are doing, we are actually running a loop between first job to the last job. So I equal to 1 to n. And then we are making sure that x of I is equal to 0. That first loop indicates that initially no jobs are selected. This is just an initialization. At the same time, you want to calculate the total profit earned. So you can say that these 4 lines are basically an initialization of algorithm. Then you will start from the first job and you will go till the last job. So you require a for loop for doing this. So for I equal to 1 to n, then what you are doing, you are selecting a particular job. So k is equal to d of I. D of I means D means deadline, and D of I means the first job. First job means the profit job with the highest profit. So that means, excuse me. Hello. So it means that we'll select a job with the highest profit initially. Okay, so obviously that will be selected first, and then I'm getting the deadline of that particular job. Now, deadline, let's say deadline is 5. Now what I'm doing over here, we are actually trying to find out the best possible slot for that job. So we are trying to find out the best possible slot for that particular job. So when you are doing that, obviously we will start the selection from the last slot. So that's why we are selecting the last slot over here by making this k is equal to d of I. So when you say while k is greater than 0, forget about this loop at this time. What we are checking? If x of k is equal to 0. Now what is k? K means the deadline, and x of k. X of k. K means what? The deadline. Let's say if your deadline is 6, then I'm checking x of 6. That means I'm checking whether 6 slot is vacant or not. Remember, initially we have made sure that all the slots are vacant. So here I am checking whether 6 slot is available or not. So if x of k is equal to 0, then what we are doing, we are making sure that now that slot is selected. That means it's not vacant. Because we have selected this job, we will be earning the profit out of it. So profit is equal to profit plus P of I. So that means we are adding the job profit of that particular job to the total profit. Because this job is being selected, we'll break here. That means the job is being selected. That means we don't require to see any further slots. So we are breaking this loop. So forget about this break right now. But go in the else part of this. That means the slot is not vacant. If the slot is not vacant, obviously you will search for the previous slot, whether that slot is vacant or not. So that's what we are doing over here. K is equal to k minus 1. So we are now looking into the previous slot. Again, I will do the same thing. If previous slot is vacant, then schedule, add profit. But when you do this, you make sure that you break out of this while loop. So this is what we are breaking, which ensures that now you are out of this while loop. That means the job is selected. And then you will increment I means your next job in the sequence, the next job which has the next possible value of profit. So I hope you understood the algorithm. We'll discuss one more example, and I think the best possible way to discuss the example is wait. I think that is available on this platform. So let me show you it here only. Right. Okay, I don't think it is responsive. So let us discuss this. We have this job scheduling. Okay. So we have job ID over here. Can you see this? Okay. So we have a job ID A, B, C, D, E. A deadline is given 21213, and profit is also given 100, 19, 17, 25, 15. So this is my profit value. This is deadline values. These are the job IDs, and this is my X. So in our algorithm, you can say this is the X we are talking about, schedule. So initially, obviously, we will first, yeah, here also you can see that your jobs are sorted in order of its profit. So initially, I'm getting the first job which has the highest profit. So 100, 27, 25, 19, and 15. So jobs are sorted in order of its profit. So the first job will be selected. So A is selected. First step is you find out the deadline of A, which is 2, I think. Yes, it's 2. So the deadline of A is 2. So you will look into the second slot. Okay. Because second slot is vacant, you will straight away schedule the job A into the second slot. Then your look for the next job in sequence. So it's C. Again, find out the deadline of C. It's 2. Then again, you go to the schedule 2. Second slot is not vacant. So what you will do, you will go to the previous slot. So here now, because previous slot is vacant, you will schedule job C into C. Next job is D. Find out the deadline. Deadline is 1. So now you will check at the first slot whether the slot is vacant. No, it's not vacant. So that means you will go to the previous slot. As it was the first slot, there is no previous slot. So it means that the job number D or job with ID D cannot be scheduled. Then B, again, B is having deadline 1, so same case. Then you have E. E is having deadline as 3, so you will start with the third slot for looking into. So we are looking into the third slot, and then because third slot is free, you will schedule the job in this E. So it means that now total profit which is being earned is by this schedule. So CAE. So A is 100, E is 15, and C is 27. So 15 plus 17 plus 100. So 142 is the total profit which is being earned. I hope you understood the example. Anything which you want to ask? Anything which is not being understood? Yes. Okay, so I am repeating again. Now let me again present this. So let us now discuss with the some another example. So rather than having the same example, we'll be discussing the same case with another example. Okay, so let's change this value 80. Then you have remember it has to be sorted in a descending order. So 35, 25, 15. Okay, fine. Then you have 3, 1, 2, 2, 2, 4. Let's add some more jobs. So F, G, E, and 2, 4. The profit are, let's say, uh, 14, 35, 35. Okay, so let's try to build for this. So now we are building a solution for this. So now you have a 0 to 6, that means 7 job. These are
Hello,
the deadlines. Yes,
hello,
yes,
sir.
yes.
Extra profit. One
Sorry.
extra profit is there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, okay. Thank you. So let us remove that extra profit. Again, you need to build. Okay. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jobs, and you have some deadline and profit association. So again, when you build this solution, it's automatically sorting this. Remember, or here I actually given the sorted only. Otherwise, let me check. Yeah, it is also sorting it. If you see this, this is bubble sort which actually being implemented. So even if you don't give this sorted, 65 and 20, it will make sure that it is sorted now. Okay. So fine. So these are the jobs which are selected. So let us start. Because job D means 120 over here, it's job D is having the highest profit, so that will be selected first. Find out the deadline of it. Deadline of D is 2. So that means the second slot will be checked first. So second slot checked over here, which was empty. Dash means empty. Because it is empty, it will be scheduled at that job, its slot. Then you will check for the next is B. Check the deadline is 1. So that means the first slot will be checked. So because it's empty, B will be scheduled. The next is C. Deadline is 2. So that means second slot is not empty. So first slot will be checked. Again, that is not empty. So C will not be scheduled. Next is A. Deadline is 3. That means the third slot will be checked. Right? So by this, now again deadline is 4. So 4 slot checked. Because it's empty, it's scheduled. F. Deadline is 3. Third slot check, second, first, all are occupied. That means F will not be scheduled. And then finally G, fourth slot will be checked. Fourth is occupied, so G will not be scheduled. So ultimately, you will get B, D, A, E. So B, D, A, and E. So that means 120, 98, 65, and 45. Got it? So approach should be clear. Once your approach is clear, then you can easily understand the algorithm. So let me share the algorithm again. Stop. Okay. So found the length, then we have make it sure that all slots are empty initially. Then you are running a simple for loop. Assume that profit. That means we are not performing the sorting, because we assume that all the jobs are sorted in order of profits. Select, find out the deadline. If deadline that slot is empty, then schedule. Otherwise, go to the previous slot. K is equal to K minus 1. You will repeat this till you have reached at the first slot. So till your first slot is reached, you will repeat this loop. If you have received, or if you have arrived at the first slot and still you are not able to schedule it, that means that job has to be skipped. So that will be skipped, and then you will go for the next job. So this is the algorithm for job sequencing with deadline. Let us discuss the time complexity. Line number 1, what is the step count? Anyone?
Well,
Okay. Yes. Line number 2 and 3, that means a for loop. What will be the time complexity for that lines? It's a single for loop. Big of, right, it will repeat n plus 1 time, but the time complexity for that loop, if we discuss in terms of asymptotic analysis, then it's big of n, right? Line number 4. 1, fine. Then you have line number 5. So you will be having n plus 1 time. Then this is n. Now k is greater than 0. That means this loop is at the max. It will run how many times? What is the maximum time this loop will be repeated? Yes, anyone? What is the maximum time this loop will be repeated? Right, n plus 1, but it's not n. For better understanding, we can say it's k, right? Because when you have a, just for the understanding, otherwise generally you can say it's n only, because ultimately if your n value is, k value is let's say 5, then at the max this will be repeated 5 times. But this is inside another loop. So that means the time complexity of this entire block of code is n square, right? Because you have a n inside n. Now you may argue that it should be n into k, but n into k means these are the two variables. And when you have one variable into another variable, in general, or when you discuss the upper bound, it's n square only. So it's n into n, so it is n square. So it means that the time complexity for this particular block is n square. Here it is n, and here when you are sorting it, it's big of n LGN. So you have n LGN plus n square. Which one is the highest order term? It is n square. So that's why time complexity of this algorithm is big of n square. Any doubt in this? Remember, whenever you are adding the two time complexity to calculate the effective time complexity, it's always the highest order term which is being considered, or which should be considered, because we are interested in worst case time complexity. So what is the worst case? Worst case is it requires n square time. Okay. Yes. Anything which is requires more clarification. Any doubt in this problem statement? Otherwise, I can continue with the next. Okay. Fine. So next problem in the sequence is the another optimization problem, which is called Huffman coding. Now let us try to understand the background of this first. All of you are aware of the zip file, ZIP, or RAR file, RAR, right? So basically what it does, it actually converts any file into the compressed version. So when you convert something into the compressed version, then the file size will get reduced. But how the files are compressed, because remember it's a lossless compression. Lossless means that if you are converting something into the zip, then that zip has to be converted back to the original version, which is called lossless. That means you are not losing the data. But when it comes to the image compression, there are some lossy compression as well. For example, JPEG. So JPEG is again a compression technique, encoding technique only, but it will convert an image into a lossy data. Lossy means that some of the information of the image will get lost. Obviously, the size of the image will get reduced, but it will be at the cost of the quality of image. Fine. So these compressions are purely based on the encoding technique. Now, what does encoding means? Encoding means that, let's say you have a text file which contains letters A to F. All the content in the text is only having 6 letters, that is A, B, C, D, E, F. If you are not using any compression technique, then how many bytes are required to represent A? Any idea? What is the size of the character in C program? How many bytes are required to store the character? Remember, character, integer. Yeah, good. 1 byte. That means 8 bits. You know why this is size is kept to 1 byte? Because 1 byte means 8 bits. 8 bit means that you can have 2 raised to 8 different combinations. 2 raised to 8 means 128. That means at the max on your keyboard, you have maximum 128 different combinations on character. That's why you don't find the keyboard with more than the original, because basically your ASCII code requires a 7 bit, so 128. One is for the sign bit. We are not going into that detail. What is our interest is one character requires 1 byte, that means 8 bit. Can we reduce that 8 to something lesser than that? Because ultimately that will be help us to reduce the size, right? Getting the point? Instead of 8 bit, if I can reduce it to something else, let's say I can represent it using 4 bits, that will reduce the size. And this is possible in our case because our data is having only 6 letters, A to F. We are not worried about the 128 different letters. We have only 6 letters, A to F, and this 6 letter can be represented by only 3 bits, because 3 bits means 2 raised to 3 different possibilities. 2 raised to 3 means 8. So you have 8 different bit combinations: 000, 001, 010, 011, 100, 111. I think there are something was missing. Whatever, but it was 8 different possibilities. That means with the 3 bits you can represent 8 different character. Let's say 000 means 1, sorry, A. 001 means B. 010 means C. 011 means D. 100 means E. 101 means F. 110 means G, and 111 means H. Right? So everywhere, whenever I find A, I will replace it with 000. Whenever I find B, I will replace it with 010. And because we know that this is encoding, right? So instead of requiring 8 bit to represent A, now I require only 3 bit to represent A. So that means my size of the file will get reduced. And this is how every encoding technique works on. It tries to analyze the data, and based on that, it tries to identify what should be the optimized size of representation. So Huffman coding problem is actually related to that problem only. We are interested in finding out the best possible way to represent the data. So it is widely used and a very effective encoding technique. So let's say we have a 6 character A to F, and we have some frequency of character. Frequency means that how many times that character is being repeated. So let's assume that A is repeated 45 times, B is 13, C is 12, D is 16, E 9, and F is 5 times repeated in this file, which is having total 100 characters. Now to represent this, let's say if we go by the scheme which we have discussed just now, that means 3 bit is required to represent 6 character. So A requires 3 bit, B, all of these requires 3 bits only. So because there are 45A, ultimately what you will require is 45 into 3, 13 into 3, that means 100 into 3. 300 bits are required to represent this file. If we go for fixed length encoding, this is called fixed length encoding because for every character we have taken fixed length of bits. So every character requires 3 bits. It means that the total length will be whatever is the size multiplied by that 3 bits. Right? So that is what we have discussed over here. You can see this kind of a scheme is applicable. These are the codes which are used for represent each character. So every occurrence of A in the text file will be replaced with 000. This is binary. These all are binary numbers. So that means if there are 10 raised to 5 characters in a file, you require 3 into 10 raised to 5 bits. Obviously, just if there are n characters, you require 3 into n bits. Are you getting this? This is called fixed length encoding. Each character requires fixed length of code. Again, this can be optimized by variable length encoding. Let us assume that now instead of a fixed length code, we are using a variable length code. So to represent A, let's say we are using only 0. That means wherever there is A, it should be replaced by 0. Wherever there is B, it should be replaced by this. If you go by this scheme, and if you go by this scheme, then if it's 100 characters, then you require 45 into 1, 13 into 3, 12 into 3, 16 into 3, E into 4, F 9 into 4, and 5 into 4, because this is the number of bits which are required to represent it. Similarly, if you have approximately 10 raised to 5 different characters of the same size, then you require this 2.24 into 10 raised to 5 bits. This was 3 into 10 raised to 5. It is 2.24 into 10 raised to 5. That means obviously this is optimized. Why it is optimized? Because it exploits the information about the frequency of occurrence of each character. Logically, it can be assumed that the numbers which is repeated more, you should use the lesser number of bits to represent that. Because when you use less number of bits, overall you can optimize the total requirements. So if you use the lesser number of bits to represent A, that means 1 bit. So that was actually converted to 45 into 3. That means 135 to 45 into 1. That means 45. So if you go for the fixed length scheme, then you require 135 bit to represent all the occurrences of A. Here you require just 45 bit to represent all the occurrences of A. So because we are exploiting the information about the frequency of that character, it will actually help us to reduce the overall size of the compressed data. But the problem is how to decompress it, how to decode it, because encoding is not just a case. Remember, it is a lossless encoding scheme. So whatever you are encoding has to be decoded back. In case of fixed length encode, let's say you have been given this beat pattern and you are supposed to give the text. So obviously you know that every 3 bit represents a single character. So what will be your approach? Approach will be very straightforward. You will simply convert all the entire beat pattern into the block of 3 only and find out which this is the combination for which character. So it's relatively easy when you have fixed length encoding, but when you have a variable length encoding, right? How can you make sure that Z0 is not for A, but it is for 101 for B? You don't have, you must have some mechanism that will help us, because ultimately in your data you have only zeros and ones. You have to make sure that this 101 is B and it is not something in some another character. Otherwise you will not be able to decode it. So you need require some kind of a mechanism, and that is called prefix code. Prefix code means that codes in which no code word is also a prefix of some another code word. It means when I use 0 for A, that means 0 will not be prefix of any code. So you can see over here, all the other encodes are starting with 1 only. 0 will not be prefix. Similarly, if I say I am using 101, then 101 will not be prefix of any code, subsequent code. Here also 101 should not be there. 101 should not be there. Again 111, 111 should not be here, should not be here. 100, 100 should not be prefix over here, here also. And this is for every character. That is called prefix code. No code is a prefix of another code. That is what we mean by prefix code. So if you have this kind of a coding mechanism or coding scheme, then you can decode it. Right? Because obviously you require some decoding algorithms as well, but it's possible. It's not that straightforward, but still it's possible, because you are assured that any code which is mentioned over here, it's not a prefix of any other code. So when you find 1011, or let's say this is the entire pattern, you get it. So you will say first letter 101. When you got this pattern, you are sure that it's a code for B. Because it's code for B, it will not be a code for anything else. So after this, whatever is the character, it is of no importance. It represents the subsequent letters and not something beyond B. So this is how you can decode it. You require obviously an algorithm. Our concern is not that particular problem. We are not here to encode and decode. We are here to find out the prefix code. So the Huffman coding is targeting the prefix code. So given the file or given the data, objective is to find out the prefix code for every character. So you will be given some random text. You will be given a random text, and for that random text, you need to find out what should be the prefix code for every character. That is the objective. So that we will continue with our discussion in the next session. Any doubt till this point? Huffman code is about an encoding scheme which is widely used to find out the prefix code for any encoding algorithm. Prefix code means that no code is a repeat, or sorry, no code is prefix of any other code. Right? So we have discussed two types of scheme: fixed length encoding, variable length encoding. Fixed length, it's good for encoding and decoding, but it has its own limitation, because the size is not that optimized. But when you go for the variable length encoding, size can be optimized. But when you go for variable length encoding, you can't straight away use any random codes to represent a character. You have to use prefix code. Prefix code means no code is a prefix of another code. So this is what we have discussed. We will continue with our discussion in the next session. Okay.